And Vegas, in true Vegas fashion, has already started putting out early odds, early point spreads for these Clemson games. Not only the Clemson games, but a lot of games in college football. But some of the bigger Clemson matchups in the 2024 season, the odds have come out on. We just got finished talking about UGA being a noon kickoff in Atlanta. UGA opens up. I pulled all of these off of DraftKings just because they had the most available when it came to spreads for Clemson so far.
They always seem to drop earlier than most other.
So they dropped them a little bit earlier, so we went ahead and went with DraftKings. And UGA obviously opens up on DraftKings as a 13.5-point favorite over Clemson in Atlanta, noon kickoff. What do you think about that line, Jordan? Is that about where you would see that line? Do you think it's going to increase before kickoff? You think it's going to go a little bit lower before kickoff? How do you see that line developing as we get closer to the season? And what are your thoughts on that initial 13.5?
Yeah, I think it's right about where I more or less where I expected that line to be, just given with the state of how Clemson was this past season versus Georgia. Clearly, there's a significant gap there as far as the team performance. Now, I do think things could be really interesting as we get closer to the season, and kind of what is coming out of spring, and maybe there are some developments there that can certainly influence that line. I said spring, but I meant fall. Either could be developments that impact that line, but I think that's right about where I would set it. I think that Georgia would, I think if Georgia were to beat Clemson by 2 touchdowns, it depends on how it would look, but that wouldn't be the worst thing in the world. I know that people hate it. It depends on how it looks, for sure. But I think that's about right. That's not what, and keep in mind, this is not my prediction. I may feel differently heading into the game, and I'm like, Clemson's going to outright win, or maybe it's going to be closer than I think, or maybe I think Georgia's going to roll by, 3+ scores. But as of right now, where we stand today with where both programs are and where rosters are, Georgia's bringing back their starting quarterback, an all SEC quarterback that projected to be a first-round pick, and a lot of weapons on offense. That makes sense why they're a double-digit favorite. So I'm not this one. I think some Clemson fans felt a little slighted about it, and I kind of understand it, because I do think Clemson's defense is going to be really good this year. But and that could influence how that game plays out. But at the end of the day, Georgia is Georgia right now, and you're not going to get that respect from the Vegas lines with how you've performed the past 3 seasons. You're just not against a national championship caliber team. So 13.5 is what it is. I think it's probably about right. And depending on how it looks, I wouldn't be that upset with it, depending on how the offense looks in that game. And, are we moving the ball? Are we putting ourselves in scoring position? Do we hit an explosive play or two? That would be nice. And, maybe you have something to build on going into, your next week. Really, your next week is not – it's definitely easier, but it's definitely one that you could catch yourself slipping if you let that Georgia game kind of linger. So
don't go in sleeping on App State.
Right.
Look, they are the Power 5 killer. They love to slay programs from the Power 5.
I'd like to keep, Clemson hasn't lost to App State, so I'd like to keep that rolling.
Absolutely.
Last time we played them was 2015, I think.
Right.
Yeah. So it's been a while.
Yeah, we can't allow that to happen, especially with how Clemson's season shapes up with it. A lot of big games happening in the first month and a half of our season. you can't afford to drop those first 2 games. Obviously, everybody's going to pick, UGA to beat Clemson, but you can't then make that much worse by, going and losing to a team like App State. No disrespect to App State, but you just can't let that happen. But, kind of like what you said, 13 and a half seems about right, I think, where we sit right now. You obviously think about UGA and what they are as the standard of college football currently. That can't be denied. And Clemson, frankly, has given no one any reason over the past 3 seasons to think that they can even come close to beating UGA. Our offensive has consistently underperformed for 3 seasons now. That's just a fact of the matter. And there has to be a lot of improvement for us to be able to even challenge UGA, for our offense to be able to challenge UGA's defense at all. And I think that's one of the big things, and we'll get into it. This isn't a prediction. This isn't, how we think the game's going to go. But, if I'm a Clemson fan, from looking at it right now, I just want to see Clemson's offense go out there and be able to actually compete and look like they belong on that field with that UGA defense, right? Regardless win or lose, that would be the kind of momentum that you need heading out of that week 1 game. Because, let's be honest, that's a tough draw, man. No one's trying to play Georgia in week 1. That's just not where you want to be. And Clemson, trying to take steps forward with an offense that has struggled for 3 seasons now. Again, that's a tough draw. But you would like to see them be able to look like they belong and compete on that field, move the ball, score some points, right? Excited about Clemson's chances from a defensive standpoint of limiting Georgia. I think, I do believe our defense will give that offense problems. But, to your point, Georgia, they're going to do what they do, right? So 13 and a half makes perfect sense to me. I think there's a lot of time between now and then that could obviously change. When it comes time to us to do predictions or breakdown for the game, we may feel completely different, right? You still got the entire summer. You got fall camp. We got to see how Clemson develops from an offensive line standpoint, from a quarterback standpoint. How's TJ Moore look? He's finally on campus at Clemson. How's he going to look in fall camp, right? So there's a lot of factors that still have to come together for Clemson in particular. I'm sure for UGA as well, but for Clemson in particular, for you to really have a feel on Clemson's chances at all in this game, specifically from an offensive standpoint. So 13 and a half feels right.